Okay, let's see here. Display captures on the wrong one. I think it's this one. There we go. Cool. So let me know if you guys can hear me. Sorry I'm a little late. I'm kind of working on a personal project for my mom. So kind of ran a little late. Home Depot, running around and stuff. So sorry about that. Um, let's see here. What was I doing? Okay. So we left off doing some HTML stuff. Forget where we ended up at. I believe we had just, yes, we finished the input stuff. And I showed you some code examples of that. Okay, so we are now done with these slides. Okay, so HTML5, we briefly talked about some elements. The input, I showed you examples about the checkboxes and stuff like that. Don't worry, we're going to be coming back to all that stuff. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. We will be revisiting a lot of this stuff again. Now, what I have here is quite interesting. So I'm gonna, oh, and I also talked about how to use live server. So again, with the live server, you go to the extensions, you install it by just typing in live server and pick the first one. It's by Ritwik Day, has about 12 million installs. So this is the one you want. Okay, once you install it, Jimbo had a problem where he had the file there but he couldn't open up the live server. Now the reason why that happened was because we need to make sure that we open up our project from a folder. So you just click on open folder and then navigate to wherever you're going to have your code. Here I just have one called playground. I hit select folder and it opens up and you have it something like this. It'll look something like that. Okay, your folder and then all the files that you have. Then with live server, right click any HTML file and then say open with live server. So I'll do that with this html.index and then let's see what I built here. Okay, so we're going to be building this today. Okay. Now, again, you look at this and you think, oh wow, this looks like crap, right? It looks boring, right? It looks boring. I'll give you that. It does look boring. But remember, next week, we're going to beautify everything. We're going to learn how to make things look pretty using CSS. Okay, and then as a bonus, we're going to learn Tailwind. And then you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use Tailwind forever now. And the answer to that is, or my comment to that is, yes, you should be using Tailwind. But before you use something like Tailwind, you should learn at least the basics of CSS. Because with Tailwind, it's incredibly extensible. You can modify it, add utilities, and stuff like that. And so we want to learn the basics first. So we're going to be learning CSS, learning how to do things the long way, and then we'll use utilities like Tailwind. And then when we get to React, we'll be using something called headless server or headless UI. I'm sorry, and then that's going to blow you away. Okay. So this is what I built. It says it's a login portal. Okay, and it says don't have an account. You click on this and it takes you somewhere else. So you notice that the URL changed and it says this is a signup.html. Okay, and then if I log in using, now you'll notice that if I just type in just a letter, it doesn't work. I have to meet a certain criteria. I have to reach a certain length. Okay, there's the password I'm using, and then when you hit login, I then spit out the email and the password associated with it. Okay, this is what essentially what I typed in. Now you'll notice that this is a what? It's a JSON object. Okay, not a JavaScript object. This is a JSON object. This is very, very important. Now the idea here is we have a form, and what we want to do is using JavaScript, we want to intercept this. So ideally, once we intercept this data here, we then send it to a specific URL endpoint, for authentication. So you could use authentication, say with Google Firebase, or if you have your own, authentication system in place, go ahead and hook it up using this. Okay. We're going to talk more about this later on in the course once we start doing stuff with React. Again, it has nothing to do with React, but we're going to save it for there. This is super basic. It's just going to intercept the information here from the form. And then when you hit OK, it's just going to take you to the home page. Okay. Now, there's not, again, this is super basic. It's nothing crazy. Okay. But it's all about the fundamentals here. Okay. Learn about the fundamentals. All right. So what does this look like? Okay. So I'm going to kill the server here. I'm going to put this as, I'm going to call this notes. Okay, I'm going to stick this over there. Move. Okay, and we're going to start from scratch. Okay. So again, starting from scratch, we're going to build this whole thing. I'm going to type in index.html. So why do I call it index.html? Why don't I call it something else? Because of the way the internet works. So when you request something from a URL, like let's say google.com, you never say google.com/index.html. It is assumed, here's the assumption, it is assumed that whatever route, route you enter, that there is an index.html. It is assumed that that may exist. And by default, if you don't specify a particular resource with a .html extension, it will always try to load index.html by default. That's just the way the internet works. It's the same as when you're using something like Java, that in order for it to run, it always tries to look for a static void main. Well, in the HTML world, right, we're talking about, the internet, it always tries to look for an index.html, okay? So I can prove this to you. Whenever you go to like google.com, you never type in index.html. That's just not what you do, because the route here is just this /. There's a / right here. That is the default route. That basically means home. By default, if you do not specify a particular resource file, it's always going to try and look for index.html. Okay, if I type this in, it's totally valid. Notice how it works. Okay, it's totally valid. If I omit it, it doesn't give me /index.html. But if I go to my inspector here, and if I go to the network, let me refresh this. Okay. Let me look for, okay. If I go here, it's always going, this is the index.html. So we look at the headers here. It should say that it's serving me back some HTML. So content type is text/HTML. Okay. And this stuff that we see here in the preview, this is index.html. That's just how it works. Okay. That's what's coming back from google.com. Now, all this other crap that you're seeing here is probably the JavaScript, some tracking, whatever, and in images. Okay. So same thing here with our live server. If I just say /, right? It's going to, oh, right now it's off. I forgot I turned it off. But it's going to try and look for index.html by default. Okay. If I don't have that, it's going to say 404. I don't know what you're looking for. Okay. And I can prove this by just deleting this real quick. Let me delete this. Or let me run the live server. Go live. Okay. So my live server is open. Notice it found index.html. Okay. But I'm going to just delete this. And then refresh it, and it's going to say, I can't find anything. Cannot get /index.html. Okay, if I remove this, we try again. And now my live server is serving as a file server, because it didn't find an index.html. So by default, it's going to show the contents of that path. Okay. Now, obviously, this is a security breach right here. So you can actually tell your servers usually all this stuff should be hidden. So if I don't give you an index, show nothing. You can change that kind of gateway behavior using some configuration. Right now, this default live server doesn't do that, or we haven't configured it, so just don't worry about it. So here I'm going to say index.html, and when I go, if I open up my live server again, localhost, I think it's serving it on I forget what I think it's 5,000, or is it 50/50? I forget. What's the port? Oh, 5,500. So localhost 5500. There we go. And then we're here. Now it's black because I have my screen reader. I'll just disable this for this, and it's just white. And if we go to inspect, go to the network, we're gonna have, well, here we should have an error here saying 404 not found for the favicon. That's fine. We refresh it. Go to the network. We just have localhost, and that's about it. If we go to the elements, it's a default HTML tag stuff because there's nothing in here. There's a file, but there's nothing there, so it defaults to that. But now here we're going to add our HTML stuff. So again, we use the exclamation mark. If you're using VS Code, you can just use the bang operator, hit enter, and it just has a bunch of default stuff. So here are the title. I'll just say sign. What do I call it? Login. Yeah, we'll just call it login. Whatever. Okay, cool. Now we refresh this. There we go. Now we have our stuff, doc type, our lang, whatever. Cool. Very cool. So if you want to have the view that I have, you just right click anywhere and go to inspect element. So it might be called inspect element, just say inspect, and you should pop up these tools. Now to get this, yours might be under responsive, or it might not even be that. It might just have it like this, okay? There should be a tab or a button here that says toggle device emulation. You can click on that. If whether you're using Chrome, I'm using Edge, which is Chromium based. So the tools here should be the same if you're using Chrome. Then right here under this responsive, you have this horizontal tab. You can just make the screen smaller. You'll notice that the width is getting smaller. You could also use the bottom to make the height smaller. So you can use this for testing. And if you click on this, you can create your own screen sizes. So here we have medium, extra large, see what that looks like. There's also a bunch of default ones. Mine has more because I checked them all off. But if you go down here where it says edit, you can actually add all the ones that you want, the ones that you're going to test for. So I just enabled all of them because why not? And then what you can do is there's these three little dots right here. It says more options. You can click on that. And usually you'll have this thing that says show device frame. So if I click on, let's say, the iPhone 5, I get this frame. If yours doesn't show up, it's probably because you have it hidden by default. But if you click the three little dots, go to show device frame, boom. Okay. So you can even rotate it. So you can see what it looks like rotated. There you go. Okay. So it's a nice way for you to test your HTML to see how it's going to look like on different screen sizes. Right here, right? It's always good to test on the actual hardware, but for now, this is fine. Okay. Cool. So we have this. Okay. So I'm gonna open up another one. So yes, code. Even now, I'm gonna pop this up on the side. Make sure. Okay. All right. Okay, so the first thing we want is we're going to want to have a title, right? We need a title. So let's do that. So the way HTML works is that if you're going to have a title on your web page, that's called the H1. Okay, so we use a tag opening like that, H1. And so the way it works is like the SEOs and the way screen readers work and all that stuff. The H1 has a very specific semantic reasoning to exist, and that is it's supposed to be the title for the entire document. Okay, when I refer to something as a document, I mean the web page, right? So this title, this H1, should be basically in the context of the entire document. Okay, so here we can call this like whatever, like if you go on Instagram, the H1 might be Instagram, right? Or whatever. So here I'll call, I forgot what I called it. I think I called it, we eat a social network for foodies or something like that. I don't know. Okay. Boom. There you go. Check that out. We eat a social network for foodies. You can see how the header is nice and big and bold. And you'll also notice that the header doesn't extend out. It actually kind of wraps around. So that's quite interesting, right? So you might be asking yourself, well, how do I see how big this thing actually is? Well, the way you can do it is, again, using the dev tools. You have this thing that says right here, select an element in the page to inspect it. So if I click on this, okay, now whenever I hover over one of these elements, it actually gives me a lot of information. So when I hover over this, you're going to see this little thing pop up. So I'm hovering over my H1. And right here at the corner, it's going to tell you the element type. So if I hover over here, it says, yo, this is an H1. Great. And it even tells you the size. This is 304 by 74 pixels. It tells you the color, the font, margins. So the orange stuff that you see here, the orange stuff, those are the margins. Okay, that's the margins. Okay. So we have, the margins here is saying that we have 21.44 margins along the X. Okay, and then does it show the padding? No, it's not going to show the padding. So if I do this horizontally, now you'll see there's a difference now. See that? See that? Now you might be saying, how is this happening? Well, the way this is working is, remember I told you I wanted you to look up what this does? So if I comment this out and retry this, look at that. It extends. In fact, I have to scroll now sideways to actually see the whole thing. It actually extends the entire thing. Now, for those of you that are young enough, when I first had when I first saw the new smartphones, like the iPhone 3GS or whatever, it used to be back in the day when you went to a website, it would have it would look like this. It would look all tiny. And then sometimes if you scroll all the way to the bottom, say use mobile version, or let's say from mobile version, use desktop version. Well, they're basically just enabling and disabling this. There's a bunch of other trickery, but they're basically enabling and disabling this. So if I enable this again, boom, look at that. Now I don't have to zoom or anything, or I don't have to scroll. What's basically happening is that the width of the actual drawable area, we call that the viewport, is going to actually be based off the device width. So this is actually a special symbol that's actually able to give you the size of the device. Okay. What's cool about this is that it's dynamic. So when I make it horizontal, that value changes because the width is now here because I have made it sideways. Okay. So it's completely dynamic in that nature. Okay. Cool. Okay. So to know more about this stuff, I highly recommend you Google this. That was kind of like one of the parts of the lesson is I wanted you to Google this part. Okay, so I want you to learn how this stuff works. Okay, that way if you have questions you can ask. I don't want to give you all the answers. I want you guys to do a little bit of digging on your own, so you guys can learn a little bit on your own. See how all this stuff is put together. It's actually pretty neat. Okay, next we want to create something called a form, because ideally we want to log in, right? We want to log in. So the way you would do that with HTML is there is a special element, a special tag called a form, okay, which is going to handle a lot of things for us. Okay. So once we add a form, we go back, nothing's changed. Okay, enable this. There's nothing around. Okay, it's blank. The form is here. We go to the body. The form's there, but there's nothing inside of it. Okay, well, that's kind of boring, right? Okay. Now inside of our form, we can start doing some stuff. So let's add an input field. Okay, type. Now the inputs, these widgets, they have attributes. So when you say type, yes, these are all inputs, but we can actually be a little bit more specific. So what's really cool is that it'll automatically do, very minor validation. So for example, for the email, it won't say it's a valid input if you don't have, like, for example, the @ sign. Like, that's pretty standard for emails to have the @ sign. So you can say email, and then it'll automatically ensure that you have an @ symbol. Okay. And this is, you can't really see the magic here until you start doing some validation, at least some basic validation on the client side. So we call this client side validation. You should not trust it. You should still do validation on the client side, but the last line of defense is going to be server side validation, which we're not going to talk about server side unless we start doing Node. Okay, so right now, just know that this is called client side validation, and it's very weak. Okay, this is very weak. Right now, it works for what we want. So there's our input field, but it's pretty boring. We can add another attribute called placeholder, and then in here we can put some text. We can say, please enter your email. ... But that's too long, right? But if we just say email ... yeah, that works. Look at that. You can zoom in here. It says email ... That's pretty cool. Okay. And if we look at it, what it looks like on desktop, that's how it looks like on the desktop. Okay. We switch to mobile. Boom. If we're using our phone sideways, that's what it looks like. Okay. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay. Next, we want to enter a password. Okay, so we say input, type, and again, there is a basic one for password. Now, what's really cool about this one is that it will replace all the text that somebody enters with either asterisks or little black dots. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. We go back. The inputs here are stacked. So I can I'll type in the word password. Boom. And you'll notice that there's this little eye here. Okay, this is default functionality, so I can click on the little eye and I can see it in plain text. Hide it, show it, hide it, show it. That's pretty cool, right? There we go. But if there's nothing here, it's just blank. So let's change that. So again, the way I do that is I use placeholder, and I can type something in like password. Again, you can type in whatever you want, but I think just saying the specific word of what this is supposed to do and then ... gets the point across. So email, password. Okay. You've already seen this a bajillion times when you sign up for YouTube, Google, or any kind of thing. Basically, you know the drill. Okay. Okay, cool. This is what it looks like sideways. And you notice that here, they're not vertically stacked, they're horizontally stacked. Now, why is that? Does anybody know why this is happening? Who can tell me why this is happening? So let me check the Discord in case somebody's chatting here. Nobody's chatting on Discord. Anybody have a guess? Nobody? Not a single soul? And I don't mean the state capital of South Korea. I think Seoul is the capital of South Korea, right? Or am I wrong? I'm probably wrong. Nobody? Okay. Well, the answer is actually in the slides, a couple of slides back, and it's because inputs are inline. That's correct. They're inline. Oh, okay. MYK Mike. I don't know how you pronounce it. Says inline, and that is correct. Okay. So how can we fix this? Okay. So Alex is already saying no BR. Exactly. No BR. And by BR, we don't mean battle rifle from Halo. We mean like break, line break. Okay. So what you could do is you can just add a break here. Boom. Hit save. When we go back, hey, look at that. Now they're on a new line. So we can start seeing how these things are working, right? Boom. So the reason why when we were over here, it was vertically stacked versus here was because the width of this input field has a default width size. It was too big to fit. So what happens is it wraps. Okay, it's called wrapping. Not wrapping like what Eminem does. Wrapping as in WRAPPING. Okay. So these are pretty close. So one option, again, we don't have any CSS yet, no magic yet. So one thing you can do is you can add another BR. Okay, so now you have, oh, there's some spacing there. Okay. Now, do these have to be stacked like this? No, you can stack them like this. Okay, it has the same effect. Okay, same effect. You could even write your code like this, and it absolutely does not care because HTML does not care about white spacing. It's going to strip them out. So it really doesn't care. These inputs, these tags have default attributes. The way the content is actually going to lay out on your document is based off the attributes you provide. And right now, these input fields have default attributes that we can override using CSS. So even if I had this whole document on one line, it doesn't care because the internal DOM tree, the rendering tree, when it gets created, it ignores all the white spaces. It just cares about the tags and the attributes. That's how the drawing is done. Okay, so what that means is like, you see where it says we eat? If I were to put a bunch of spaces in the front like that and hit save, it has no effect. Okay, if I were to put something between we and eat, a bunch of spaces, hit save, and go back, it has no effect. Let's refresh it just to make sure, no effect. Okay. So this is incredibly important that we understand this. Okay. So don't waste spaces. We have to do everything using CSS. So if we wanted a space between this, we could use something called a span, and then we can style that or do something else. Okay. All right. Let me put everything back the way it was. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, the only reason why we're formatting things like this is just so we can read it as developers, we can read it. And if somebody else comes in and has to write some code, they can also read it. Okay, this is just good coding style. Okay, make it nice and clean. Okay, I have terrible handwriting, but when it comes to my code, I like to make this as clean and as nice as possible. By the end, it almost looks like a work of art. It looks so nice. That's the goal. Okay, now we have that. So what else do we need? Okay, so a lot of times when you're, oh, we need a button. So let's write a button. Okay, let's do a button. We need a button. We need the submit button. So we say, again, there's a bunch of different ways you can have an input as a button. We don't want to do that. You could do it, but we don't want to do that. Now, the reason why is because I said the last time is if you were to do this, make this a button, which again, totally can. I'll call this login. That's the value. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's great. That's great, right? It's a button, and I can click on it. Okay, so it has its functionality. Okay, it's a button. Very, very cool. The problem is that input tags, they don't have a closing tag, meaning I can't do this. Okay, it doesn't even register with see how breaking. It's like it doesn't even want to format itself. That's because inputs don't have a closing tag, just like BR doesn't have a closing tag. Okay, these are meant to just as one line. This means that we cannot inject HTML inside of it. It can't hold any HTML. It can't have, so input fields cannot have children. Okay, input fields cannot have children. However, there's a special tag called an element button. This one can have HTML. It can have children. So later on, when we start doing some pretty, actually, let's do it now. Let's do it now, just so you guys can see. There's a nice website called Hero Icons. Beautiful. We have all these SVG icons. SVG is I forgot what's that. Something very vector graphics. Stylable vector graphics. I forget what SVG stands for. Something vector graphics. Anyways, here has a plethora of icons that are ready for you to use. So let me type in something called like login. Login. Beautiful. Copy SVG. Okay. Now we have a beautiful icon. I'm gonna just paste it in here and it's ready to go. Boom. Okay, I have to give the button, I believe I have to give it a width. So class name. Oh, I can't. Sorry. See, width. Let's do 20 pixels, really. Okay. I don't know why it's not filling. Should have worked. See, style. Oh, current color. I don't think it has a color. Well, let's see. Here we have width, 20 pixels. Did that work? There we go. It didn't have a width. All right, and it's very tiny. It's very tiny. Okay. Let's remove this. Okay. And you can add a style here. Style width. Let's say 100%. Okay, the height needs to get bigger. And then height. Whoops. We'll make the height. This will be a lot easier once we use Tailwind. Height 100%. It's still too small. Okay. Let's just hard code it. Don't hard code stuff, okay? 20 pixels. These icons are specifically meant to be used with like Tailwind, because the guy who made Tailwind made these icons too. So everything's gonna look kind of jacked. So you know what? Screw the SVG for now. Don't worry about it. But the point is that you can actually do that with input fields. You can't. That was the whole point. Scalable vector graphics. There you go. Thank you, Alex and Herman. So here, let's just put a plain old login. Okay, for now. Boom, login. Now, the problem, again, we have is that the login button is on the side. And you notice something weird happened when I clicked on that button. Okay, we got to change that. So this is a problem. This looks ugly. We want to put it on a separate, we want to keep everything vertical. So let's do another BR. Another BR. There we go. And if if you want, you can have this button all in one line. Totally do that. Why not? Let's do that. Boom. Okay, cool. All right. Not too bad, not too bad. It's looking pretty nice. Okay. Still looks terrible. It looks terrible, but we're getting there. Remember, HTML, it ain't gonna look pretty. The CSS, that's how we make things pretty. Okay. All right, so we have this. Okay, we're getting there. All right. Now, a lot of the times in your form, sometimes you'll have some text saying, don't have an account? Don't have an account yet? Would you like to sign up? Right? You've all seen that, right? So you guys know what I'm talking about. So let's do a paragraph. It says, don't have an account? Question mark? And usually like something here like says sign up. Right? You guys have all seen this, right? I'm not BSing you. You guys have all seen that. Right? It's pretty standard practice. If they don't have an account and you want users to create accounts, what do? Well, make it easy for them to navigate to the sign up page. Okay. Usually you click this, right? But here I click it. This is not clickable. So how can we make this clickable? Does anybody know how we can make this clickable? Anybody have a guess? Help me out. All right. Well, somebody finds me the answer. I'm gonna close this up and look at that. This is how it looks like on the desktop. Okay. It's not too bad. Not too bad. Anybody know how I can make this clickable? Make it a link. Let me check Discord in case somebody has the answer. Mike, do you have the answer? Help me, Mike. You're my only hope. Nobody? Okay. Well, I'll give you the answer then. That's using the A tag. Remember the A tag? This is how you create hyperlinks. So the way you do it, we can take this. Well, you pick. What do you want to be clickable? The link. Boom. Mike says A tag. Beautiful. Thank you so much. So we can just copy this. So I'm gonna cut it using Control C, Control X. Gone. I'm gonna use the A tag, and I'm gonna paste it in there. So I don't want the bang, the exclamation mark, to be part of the clickable thingy. So I'll leave that on the outside. So there you go. Now, question before I show you. Will this look like how it is now, or will it go to its own line? Can anybody answer me that question? And then why, tell me why. So give me the reasoning why. And use the proper keywords here. Okay? Will the A tag go to a new line or stay in the same line? Why? What do you guys think? Hopefully not coding it at the same time. It will be on the same line. Okay, but why is that? What's your reasoning for that? Tell me why. Just because it wants to, or? All right, Mike's typing. Ooh, here we go. Because there is no BR tag. Well, that's true. But close, but no cigar. It's still inline. Yes, because the default styling, okay, the default styling for A tags is being inline. That is, they're going to be on the same line that it's been defined. Okay, that's why it's still there. Now, it's not clickable, but if I select this tool again, I nibble it and I hover over A, sign up, notice the tag. You'll see the tag on the top left-hand corner of this white box that popped up. It says A, but it's not clickable. I'm clicking and nothing's happening. And if I go to the right side, you can see here it's sign up, and it's in an A tag, but it's not clickable. What the heck? That's because I haven't actually specified an href. The href is the hyperlink reference. So here I can, if I just do like that, that's usually what you do when you're doing when you're developing. Just put it like that to basically mean stay in the same page. Okay. Boom. Oh, look at the color. It's changed now. It's no longer black. It's this blue color. That's because the default style is that links that have valid hrefs will turn this blue color to signify that it is in fact a hyperlink. So now, if I disable this, if I hover over with my regular mouse, like if I'm on my desk, you can't hover if you're on a phone, right? Because that's not exactly possible. But you'll notice here when I hover over, the mouse icon changes, and look at the bottom left-hand corner right here. Look right here. It's actually telling me what this link goes to, and saying it goes to localhost, the port slash, and then it has the pound sign. Okay, that's not there by accident. It's because I said I want you to go there. So if I click on this, okay, nothing really happens. Well, I go here, right? There's the hash, the pound symbol, and then you'll notice that it turned purple. It's no longer blue, it's this purple color. That's because your browser will keep track of all the links that you've gone to based off of a specific web page. It actually creates these links, it caches them. So links that have already been visited by a specific link tag will become purple. It's called visited. So the state, so these elements actually have states associated with them. So because it's already been visited, it turns purple. If I were to clear my history, it'll actually become blue again. Okay, cool. Okay. Now, can anybody tell me what the problem here is as far as um, semantics is concerned? What's wrong with this? Can anybody tell me? Is this semantically correct? What I have done here, based off what we talked about the last time with sections and article tags, is this semantically correct? Or can we go one step higher in order to organize our HTML? Because remember, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's the way you structure the content on your web page. So the HTML is all about structure. So does it work? Well, I mean, yeah. Obviously, it's not crashing. It looks correct. But is it semantically correct? And so Mike here on Discord says it can be in an article. Yes. Yes, it can. Now, why an article and not a section? Or could we use both? Which one do you think would be better, an article or a section? Can be standalone. Yeah, exactly. It should have all the information you need in order to figure out, okay, yeah, this is a login, okay, but for what? That's the next thing is, but for what? So when you go to a website and it says login with GitHub or login with Google, those are probably in an article. Most likely they're not in an article. It's probably in a div. But, semantically, you can make the argument that, well, you can put it as an article, but you should make it, you should use the content within the article to make it known the context of this of the content. For example, if you have a login and it just says email and password, that's not really unique, right? But if you had a website where you could log in with a bunch of different ways, like login with Twitter, login with Facebook, etc., when you present the login, you should make it presentable where it's explicitly known where this login is, this portal, we call it a portal, originates from, or what its goal is. So if it was Google, put the Google colors, put the Google sign, right? You have to get the special logos. You can get it from the website, how to do that. Usually, if you're doing a login with XYZ company, they'll actually have specific ways that you should actually put your markup. Okay, there are actual ways. If you don't do it, they might like say, hey, you can't use our services unless you present our login page like this. Okay, so there's actually rules. Okay, there are actual rules to this. So for now, let's use an article tag. So we say article, okay? And then I'm gonna stick this form in the p tag up there, delete this. And then I'll add a header. Now, because I already have an h1 in the document, you should not use another h1. Could you? Yes, but you shouldn't. So let's go with an h2. Okay, it's called a sub, it's a header but has less emphasis. And then here we'll just say login. Okay, then we go back. Look at this, right? Everything looks the same, but now with this title here, it says login. You see how it's starting to make a little bit more sense? The context is starting to grow slowly. Okay, isn't this beautiful? Again, this is all about structuring our content. That's what the HTML does. No more, no less. Okay, it's just structuring our content. Don't fight with it. Go with the flow. Okay. This looks great. Now, if you switch it to mobile device, look at that. That looks, not gonna lie, for a very minimal amount of stuff that we've done, that looks pretty damn good. Right? Anybody agree? This looks pretty nice. Okay. Obviously, there's stuff we can do, but for now, this looks pretty good. Okay. Can't make billions yet, but we'll get there. Okay, cool. Now, one thing you'll notice if you've been paying attention, if we go back to home, home, remember, is always slash, right? By default, the resource path slash will get removed in the URL. So you just have that. Okay. You'll notice that if I hit login, first of all, let me ask you a question. Should I be able to hit login? Am I in a valid state as far as my form is concerned to be able to have this button to actually try to log in? What do you guys think? Sprinkle Taurus is typing. Let's go. Emmanuel says no. Victoria says it's empty. Okay. I don't think you specified whether it's valid or not. I say yes. That's a good point. That's a good point. By default, an empty input is a valid input. Okay. That is the default. Now, we have to go into the structure or the semantics of how a form works. Let me ask you a question. Is an email input required to log in this context? Is it required, yes or no? Anybody? That is, if I leave the email input empty, is there still a way for me to log in? Sprinkle Taurus says yes, that is that it should be a required field, meaning it should be non-empty. What about password? Is password a requirement to log in? That is, could I leave it empty? Is that a valid state? Emmanuel says yes, that password is a requirement. So we can say that they are both required, correct? Okay. The cool thing about the inputs is we can actually specify this. We can add an attribute called required. Required. Okay, save. Let's go back, refresh here just to make sure. If I click login, oh, please fill out this field. Oh my gosh, look at that. All right, so let me type it in. So I'll type in my email here, hit login. Oh, please fill out this field. Oh, look at that. Isn't that cool? That's pretty cool. Right? Now, all of this is happening because my inputs are inside a form, so context matters. Okay. Now, the other thing you'll notice, if we go to my network tab, let's refresh this, type this again, and then I'll hit login. Nothing in my network has queued up. There has been no network calls. By default, when you try to submit a form, it will always go to slash and then send the data there wherever you're currently at, unless you specify a specific path. If you don't specify a path, it's going to go to wherever the current domain is and then send the data there. Now, I already went over in Postman how that data is actually encoded, and it's called x-www encoding, something like that. Form-data encoding. Okay, that's how it's going to send it. It's basically a series of key value pairs. So if I were to type in a password now, just let's say M, right? Literally one letter. If I hit login, I want you to pay attention to the top and pay attention to the network tab. Boom. It went through. It sent it through. Okay, because it was technically valid. I didn't specify any other requirements. So let's specify a few other requirements too that we can actually do using attributes. Again, this is called client-side validation, and I have to specify or emphasize that this is very weak, but at least this is something you can do. Okay, so I can say, okay, the password, I can say min length, what should be the length? At least 8 characters. Okay, now let's go back. Type in an email, password, I type in M, hit login. Oh, please lengthen this text to 8 characters or more. You are currently using 1. Wow. Very cool, huh? Okay. So now I can type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I need 8. You're currently using 7 characters. Okay, let me type in one more. And okay, hit login. Boom, it went through, right? And it's not doing anything because I don't have a server running that can actually take this data, but you can see that it's working. Okay. Now, what if I type in something here like that, and I go here to my password, and I type in the word password 123. It's not empty. The email field is not empty. There's something there, and then here I have a password, password 123, and hit login. Oh, please include an @ in the email address. ASDF is missing an @. Oh, look at that. Now, why did that work? That worked because my input was specified as the type email. And so it has some internal validation that is going to try and look for specific characters. One of them is the @ symbol. Okay. So let me just put an erase everything, just put an @ symbol. So let's put an @ symbol. Okay. I still have my password, my super safe password, password 123, and hit login. Please enter a part followed by @ is incomplete. Okay, so there's a part. A, login. Okay, enter part followed by is incomplete. Okay, so let me type in another A in the front, hit login. Okay, that went through. So A is a valid email. Is that true? Is that a valid email? Well, honestly, I think not, because I'm pretty sure email addresses are supposed to link to a specific domain. That's kind of how it works. So I need a dot something, .com, .com.eu, or .com.au, or .uk. So you can see that if you need to be a little bit more specific, we have to write our own rules, okay? You can. We're not going to go over that right now, but the thing is you can. So the reason why I went through that little exercise there, or that little demo, is because I want you to not rely so much on the default validation that is in these elements. You will have to validate on the client side as much as you can, based off what your backend is expecting, but then you need to do your validation on your server. That's your last line of defense. Basically, what I'm saying is you can never trust the information, the data that a user is going to send your way. You absolutely cannot trust it. Okay. So after that little tidbit, let's keep going. Okay. So this is looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Now, I want to send the email and password to another API that's not in my domain. So I want to change the default behavior. So how can I do that? Well, I can't do this in HTML because HTML is just a language to structure my content. Enter the world of JavaScript. Okay, so the JavaScript is actually what's going to save us here. This is why I went over JavaScript before I touched anything else. Okay, so let's write some JavaScript. So before our body ends, let's add a script tag. Okay, let's do some JavaScript. So the first thing I want to do is I want to stop the form from submitting to the default URL that it always tries to do. I want to stop it. Okay, so let's stop it. So first, let's get access to our form. Now, there are a couple of ways you can do this. The ideal way is that you should be using IDs. Now, the IDs must be unique for the entire document, not just unique to the element, but the entire document. Okay? For now, for demo purposes, I'm just going to say ID, and I'm just going to call this login form. Okay? That's it. Ideally, though, this will be even more unique, especially if you have multiple forms to submit stuff. Okay? You should be a little bit more specific. Okay? Maybe use like a hash or something like that to make it very unique. But again, that's at your discretion. If it doesn't have to be that complicated, then don't do it. Okay? For now, that looks pretty good. This idea is pretty good. Okay. Now, I need to get access to this form. So how do I do that? Well, I'm gonna create a variable, call it const. I'm gonna call it form. There's my variable. Again, we're in JavaScript. This has nothing to do with HTML. We're now in JavaScript world. Now the API, the web API, is we can use, so I'm gonna set this equal to, there is something called a document. The document is basically the document that we're working with. That's why I keep calling it a document, because that's what it is, it's a document. So this is from the browser. So this is JavaScript API for the browser. This is what we call a web API. This is an API that is very specific to the web. You can't use this in Node because it's not a Node API. This is a web API. So you say document dot, and we can say get element, and you can see there's a bunch of different ways. We can get it by ID, by a class name, by name. There's also an attribute called name, so it looks just like ID, but you give it a name. And you'll notice that these are plural. These ones are plural because you could have the same name for multiple elements. You could also have the same class name for multiple elements. The tag name is not unique. If I say input, it'll grab 2 inputs because there's at least 2 inputs on my document. So these are all plural because there could be more than one. But you'll notice that the very top one, get element by ID, is singular and it's not plural, meaning you only ever get one. And the way it works is with IDs is that it's going to parse the DOM tree and then it's going to return the very first element it encounters with the ID you specified. So will your HTML document break if you have the same ID on multiple elements? No. However, it's undefined behavior because the API here is going to return the very first element it finds with that ID. So if you're using the same ID for multiple elements, even if they're different types, you're going to get undefined behavior. Okay, so I'm just letting you know. That's why I say it should be unique. So get element by ID. Here I'm going to specify the ID, which is login form. Cool. Now I'm just going to log it to the console, console.log form. Let's see what this looks like. So I go back here, go to my console, and look at that. It just spits out the HTML. It literally grabbed the HTML element. Isn't this cool? It's great. It grabbed the whole form. Nice. Very nice. Heck, this is a JavaScript object, so I can write the type of on the form. Let's see, what is this type? Let's go back. It's an object type. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, cool. Now, when you hit the submit button, okay, when you hit the button, login. In fact, I probably should have specified here more that this is a button. Let's see, what else do we need to do? I think, oh, no, not button. Submit. This is a submit button. Okay, the type of button here is it's still a button. If we go back, it looks the same. But so the way forms work is that there should be at least one button that's a type of submit. If no submit button is found, it's going to find the first button it finds, and it's going to automatically make it a submit button, or it's going to treat it like a submit button. So here we're being a little bit more explicit rather than implicit. So we're saying that this button type is a button, but it's a submit button. Okay. Just for your information about that. Okay. Now, when that button gets clicked, there is an event that gets raised. Okay, we want to listen to it because when that event gets raised, we want to intercept it. We want to change some stuff. So we can say on the form dot add event listener, which event? Go as a string and it's called submit. Okay, this is the event type submit, and then we can add a listener. Okay, so we're going to use a Lambda expression here. This is ES6. And you'll notice that this listener takes in one variable. It has one parameter. So it's called, you can call it whatever you want, but the type is event. Okay, so I'll just call it EV. You can call it whatever you want. I'll call it event, just so you know that you can call it whatever you want. But it's very clear that EV, event, or even just E means the event object. Those are pretty common in the world of JavaScript. You can call it E. That's also something. Event. But usually we call it EV for event, and then E is for for error codes when we're catching errors. So I'll just call it event for now. Okay, end it with your semicolon right there. Okay, cool. Now, when the submit happens, we want to stop the form from doing its default behavior. That is, it's going to send it to the location URL, and it's going to send the data there. But let's say we're using Google Firebase. Well, we want to route the information to Google Firebase. But Google Firebase will accept xwww form data. But let's say we wanted to add some extra stuff. Okay, let's just say. Well, in that case, we need to intercept it and we need to shape up the body for the HTTP request. How we're going to send the data. Okay. So that's what this process is for. Okay, so what you do is you say event dot prevent default. Hit save. Now if I go over here, let's load up my network. We'll refresh, or let me just remove that. Let's refresh. Let me hit the submit button. Okay, it says fill that out. Okay. Put a password 123. Let's check out the network tab here. Hit login. Nothing. It's no longer going through. Why? Because we intercepted the event and we prevented it from happening. In fact, let me put a console.log default prevented. Okay, let's refresh. Save that. Let's go to the console. Hit type in my email. Put a bunch of stuff in there. Hit login. Default prevented. Right. So I'm hijacking the form event, and I'm going to enter my own stuff. This is why cross-site scripting attacks are incredibly dangerous, because with JavaScript, we can basically hijack the entire behavior of the HTML document. We're going to talk about security later on in the course, but you can already start seeing that how powerful JavaScript is. And honestly, the user has no idea this stuff is happening, which is why you have to be very, very careful what sites you go on, because if they start doing cross-site scripting, you're basically doomed. There's a lot of things they can do, right? And you have no idea of what's going on until it's too late, okay? I'll actually teach you how to write cross-site scripting attacks so you can learn how to prevent them in your code. And it's pretty scary how easy it is to do. Okay, so there we go. Prevented. We hijacked it. Good. Next. We want to get the actual form data out. Now, how do we do that? So there's an API for this. So there's a data structure. So we'll create one, const form data is equal to new form data. And you pass in the object, form in this case. Okay. So you got to pass in the actual element in here, and boom, form. Done. The next thing is we need to grab the, well, there's a couple of ways to do this. Okay. I like to use the iterator pattern for this, and I'll show you that using a for loop. Okay. How we can grab these entries. So to grab the data, there's a couple of ways. One, we can say, watch, We'll say form data, and let's inspect it. Form data dot. There's a bunch of ways. There's keys, there's get all, there's entries, there's values. You can even do a for each on it. Say for each what, right? And there's a bunch of things we can do, okay? Now, the fact that it has this for each, okay, with JavaScript, it means it supports the of operator, the of operator. So there's a for loop I haven't taught you yet because we haven't gotten there, but I showed you 3 loops. So I'm about to show you a new loop. This is called for. Then you create your variable, okay? So I can call this, we'll just call this data. You say of form data. Okay, let's log this to the console and see what this looks like. We put that data in there. Okay, hit save. Okay, my console, type in my email. Okay, some crazy password, log in. Nothing happened. Okay, nothing happened. Now, why is that? Well, the reason why that happened, why there's nothing there, nothing happened here, is because I didn't give these keys. Remember, with JavaScript, when you're creating your objects, you need to have a key. Every key is associated with a value. I didn't specify a key here. Now, how do I specify a key? I have to put name. What is this name? I'll call it email. Again, you call it whatever you want. Name. I'll call this one PWD for password. Okay, now it has a name. Hit save. Let's try this again. Pacheco. Crazy password, log in. Boom, look at that. Now my form data actually has data. I intercepted it. So I have the email there. The key here is email because I put in a name. The name attribute creates the key. And then on my password, I put the key, the name there as PWD. So it's going to pick up the name from that form entry, and that's what creates the key. Now, what data type did I just are we seeing here? Does anybody know what is this data type? What is this data type? Somebody tell me. What is this? We can even expand it here. Anybody tell me this data type? What is it? Mike is typing. Sprinkle Taurus is typing. This is JSON. Okay. Who else? Anybody else? Alex says array of strings. That's the key word right there, array. This is an array. Why is it an array? Why is it an array though? What makes it look like an array to you? Mike says because of the square brackets. Beautiful. That is correct. Right? That is correct. You can just see the square bracket. You see, again, remember we talked about arrays? Whenever you see a square bracket, immediately, oh, that's an array. Right? That's it. You see curly braces? Immediately, that's an object. You don't even have to think about it. You just look at it. I see square bracket. That's an array. Oh, I see curly braces. There's an object somewhere. Done. Each element separated by a comma. Not quite, because with JSON, where JavaScript objects, not JSON, but JavaScript objects, you use commas as well to separate the key value pairs, the tuples. But yes, that is one way. So that's like half an answer. I get like half a point to that. Because comma isn't enough. You have to see it also around what else is going on. Because remember, the elements of the array can be tuples. And so you would look at it and be like, oh, this is a JSON, or this is a JavaScript object. But I fool you because the elements become tuples, and it looks almost like a JavaScript object, except that the ends are square brackets. So the syntax there could look very similar, but they won't be the same. So you have to be very, very, very careful. Now, so Sprinkle Torres said, oh, it's JSON. JSON is a string. It's basically your JavaScript object converted to a string. So when we're talking about objects in the JavaScript world, how we're actually typing them out, it's JSON, it's JavaScript objects. Okay? JSON is a string that has the JavaScript object notation. But remember, the keys become strings. You see the quotes. Okay? You see quotes. Okay? Here, there's quotes because they're strings, but this is not yet. I can convert these to a string. So if I were to say JSON.stringify, and then I put the data in there, then I would be like, yeah, this is a JSON object. However, or it's a JSON string, but the inside is still an array. See the difference? This is now a string. It's not going to put the quotes around, but this is you can tell that this is a string. So in the developer tools here, anything that turns really, really bright white like that is a string. Okay? All right. Cool. So the problem is, though, that we have an array where the first element is the key, and then the second element is the actual value. Okay? But let's say that my API, my server, right, my node server, only accepts JSON objects. So I need to convert this. That's why the assignment that I sent you guys for you to do was actually dealing with something like that, where you get data that's not correct. Now you need to convert it to the proper, what we call a shape, the correct shape. And then, because that's what your API is expecting, okay? Your backend, your system, whatever. It's expecting a specific shape. So you're going to have to clean your data up a lot of the times. This data is an array. I can't send an array to my backend because my backend is expecting a JavaScript object with key value pairs, email, and then password say. So this is not good enough. Can I fix this? Well, yeah, totally. One way we can say is constant. I like to call it payload. This is the payload. Okay, this is data I'm going to send somewhere else. I call it payload. That's my my nomenclature, payload. So how do we do this? Well, my payload is going to be a JavaScript object. So there you go. Remember when we created an array? If you just do that, that creates an empty array. Well, if you use the curly braces, this creates an empty JS object, JavaScript object. This is an empty JavaScript object. Okay, it's empty. It has nothing. Okay. Now with this data here, I say for, okay, I say const my data of form data. So this is called an iterator loop. It's a for loop, but specifically it's an iterator because form data has the for each method in there. That's why it works. Okay. Among other things. Okay. You can even grab an iterator from this. There's even an entries, which is actually an iterator. You can actually see the name right there, iterator. Okay. Okay. So this is how we can inspect this object. Okay, cool. Now, the thing is that the data, you can actually see it's an array of string and then the form data entry value. So the string here, the very first element, it's even telling you the size. The size of this array is always going to be 2. The first one will always be a string. The second one, it has no idea. It's whatever the form data entry value is. So it could be a file. It could be an image. It could be a string. It could be a number. It has no idea. It just knows that this is going to be the value that you entered in your input field, whatever that may be. A date. It could be a date. However, all we know from this data structure that we see right here is that it's an array with two, okay? It's an array with two entries, always. So remember when I told you in the first assignment to split up the name into first name and last name? So you guys can, that was in the first assignment. We're going to use that same basic solution to solve this problem. How do we get this stuff out? Well, we're about to do it right now. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. So we say const, call this the key. Okay, the key. You call it whatever you want. Let's say you call it name. So this name is basically supposed to represent these names right here on these inputs. So we say name is equal to, well, what's the name? Well, this data is actually an array, so we grab it from the first one. The first one will always be the name that we specify here. So that's email and then pwd, whatever. Now I want the value. Const, if I can write, okay, const value equals data. It will always be the second one, which is index 1. That's the shape. If we hover over data, that's the shape. Okay, it's not a coincidence. This is how it is. This is how the data structure for data is. Okay. Okay, well, there we go. Now, how can I add those to my payload? Well, the beautiful thing is I can just say payload. Okay. I can say, if I use the dot operator, here's the problem. So if I say dot name, that's going to create a property called name. And if I say the value is name, then that creates a key value pair where the key is called name and the value is whatever name is. So this, let's just go through it. Why am I talking? Let's just see. So a lot of you guys may do something like this. Oh, I just want to add the value, and this might be your first thing that may come in mind when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. And I'm going to show you why this is wrong. So type in my email again. So password, hit login. Oh, I'm dumb. I didn't payload. There we go. Do it again. Blah blah blah. Login. Look at that. So I have a JavaScript object where the key name is pwd and the value is the password. Where's my email? Well, the key is the same for both entries. It's name. So they're overriding each other. So we need the keys to be unique based off this actual value right here, this pwd. So how can we do that? If you need to construct a JavaScript object dynamically where the key, you have no idea what the key is, the only way to do that is using bracket notation. So this is how we solve this problem. We say payload bracket name equals value. This name is a string. Payload, whenever using a bracket, it's because you don't know what the property or the key name is. I don't know what this is. So this is how I can dynamically add properties to my JavaScript object. This is how you do it. This is the notation you would use. So I hit save, go back, type in my email, bunch of garbage in there, log in. Oh, snaps. I have my JavaScript object where the key is email. The value is my actual email, and my other key, separated by a comma, is pwd, and the value is my actual password value. Oh, snaps. Right? Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. That looks great. Now, this, I hate it. Right? This looks ugly. Syntactically, it looks ugly. Does it work? Yes, but I hate it. So how can we achieve the same effect but make it look badass? Okay, how can we make this look badass? So in JavaScript, we have a concept called object destructuring, and also called, another one is array destructuring. I believe you can do this with Python too. my Python people, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you can do what I'm about to do in Python as well. Actually, I'm pretty sure you can do this with Python. So I'm going to create my variables, name and value, and I'm going to specifically pull them out of the array. And the order in which I do this is going to matter. So I'm going to say const, and here's the new syntax. This is how you know if somebody is destructuring. So if I'm going to do array destructuring, I need to use square brackets. Okay. I'm not creating an array. I'm saying I'm going to pull data out of an array like this. Now, how you order your variables inside of here is where in the array index that value is going to get put into there. So if I type in name like this, okay, this is basically saying data at 0, index 0. Remember, we count in computer science, we count from 0. If I type in value here, this is going to pull out data at 1. And all I have to say is equal to data. Okay. This syntax is equivalent to this, but now I have a one-liner. This is called array destructoring, and this is part of the ES6. It's part of ES6. Array destructuring. Okay. Basically, this is index 0, and this is index 1. But I'm just giving it a variable name. Again, this variable name has absolutely nothing to do with your array. I could call this apple and tuna, and it's going to work the exact same way. Okay, so if I save this now, and I go back, put my email again, put some garbage, log in, boom, pulled it up just the same. And now I can do it in one line. Instead of 2 lines, I can put it in 1 line. Okay, so when you're doing your interview for JavaScript, do array destructuring. Do the destructuring. This way they know, oh, okay, they have some advanced knowledge of JavaScript. That's dope, right? It's not beginner. This is beginners. This is a little bit more intermediate. Okay? It's very simple, but if you understand how this is working, it shows that you have more knowledge of JavaScript than your average JavaScript developer, which is good. Especially when we talk about beginners. Okay? This is good. It looks funky, I admit, but that's how it works. Okay? If you're confused, please ask questions. Okay? Okay. Now, the last thing we do today, I'm gonna just I want to basically display this as an alert message on the browser. So I'm gonna say you could do this a couple of ways. If you want to be a little bit more specific, you could say window.alert, or you can just say alert. So alert is going to cause a pop-up to happen on your browser. So I'm going to say alert, and then I'm going to just say JSON. Alert can only take a string. So JSON.stringify. I'm going to stringify my payload. Okay. Display this data as an alert dialog box. Hit save. Type in my email. Type a bunch of garbage. Log in. Boom. Popped up. Bam. Right there. Pada bing. Pada boom. Okay. Okay. Now, at this point, if you had an endpoint where to send this data, you would do something like fetch, and you'd be like, okay, go to api.domain.com/auth, right? And then you would do something like here on the options, you would say method, and you would do something like a post. You would post it, and then you say body, and you say json.stringify payload. Okay, and then you do like a then you get some kind of like response message from that, And then you say dot catch in case there's an error. Oops. In case there's an error, do that like that, and then you catch the error. We're going to do this later, not right now, but ideally, once you have the payload, you then send the payload to some endpoint. Ideally, it's HTTPS, something like that. API.domain/auth, and then you send it as a post message because you're sending data, and the body looks like that. You could also do something like, where is that? Headers. You can specify the headers here. Content type application/JSON. Okay, so you know that you're telling the server, hey, the structure of my payload is actually going to be application/JSON. So I don't know how to say your name, Tuareg. Hopefully I got that right. Has to leave. We're all gonna take off. 7:30 now. I went a little bit over time. Don't mind this. I'm just saying, like, what would be the next step? We will be doing this. You guys will become pros at this. I promise. Stick around, okay, for the rest of the summer. Hopefully this is pretty cool. You saw how we use the HTML and why it's important to know the JavaScript. Again, other than showing you the add event listener and the element by ID, these are API specific things. All of this though, you guys, I've already shown you. And some of the assignments has already kind of talked about forming data. Okay, so it should not be a surprise how sometimes we have to do this stuff. Okay, please, please, please do the activities. They're on the slides, and do the assignments whenever I assign them. And please, please, please ask questions. And as you're watching the videos, whatever I do in the video, do it yourself again. Add something else. What happens if you add a radio button? Like, put something in there, right? How do you do a radio button? Well, watch the video that we did on Monday where I show how you can do radio buttons, okay? Or checkbox, something. Add extra stuff. So the way I learned programming, or how I got better at it, was every time my professor showed me something, or whenever I watched, I back then there was YouTube videos, but there wasn't that many. So every time I read something on like Stack Overflow, or I read something on some blog or something like that, whatever it was, I would always try to replicate those things, and I would always add something else just to make it more complicated so I can break it, I can look at the errors, and I can try and solve these problems. That is what's called experience. I cannot teach you those things. I can show you, but I cannot teach you that. Experience only comes with you actually doing something. I cannot teach you that. Experience cannot be taught. That is just something you're going to have to do. I can show you stuff to get you started, but then it's totally up to you to gain the experience. And through experience, you gain skills, right? Because later on, when you're at a job or you're working on a problem, you'd be like, I know how to solve this problem because I've already seen this before. So whenever you see one of those developers and they're like, oh my God, he's so fast, he's so smart. Yeah, he's probably smart. Yeah. That's true. But he's experienced. He's seasoned. He or she is seasoned. They've been doing it for X amount of years. These problems they've already seen pop up over and over and over again. Okay? I cannot teach you that. Okay? I cannot teach you that. That is on you. The experience stuff is totally on you. I cannot teach you that. Through experience, building stuff, breaking it, solving it, ask questions. We're here to answer your questions. Put on the Discord, ask some questions. We can answer your questions. Look it up on Stack Overflow. That is the process. That's how you build skills. And through that, your experience. So when you go to your interview and they ask you, tell us about your project. Oh man, I had XYZ problem, but I was able to solve it using these solutions. It shows that you never gave up, right? It shows that you never gave up. That's what people hire you for, to solve problems, okay? And a lot of times when you're trying to build something, there's a lot of problems that you're going to have to solve. But you're only ever going to have that seasonedness is by actually building stuff, even if it's something small. there's quite a bit of problems that you're going to have to solve. Okay, so that all comes through experience, and through experience you have skills, and through all that time you gain wisdom. And then you become a master of your you know, of your craft. Okay, so masters is just somebody that's just, you know, has put in thousands, not tens of thousands of hours into it. Okay, so you'll get there. You'll get there. All right? So please practice, do all this stuff all over again on your own. Okay, see how far you can get. Use the videos. Use Discord, please. That's why it's there. We're all here to help. So please do try this on your own, and gain that experience. Okay, and with that, I will see you guys on Friday. Well, we will continue this because we are not done. Okay, and then on Monday we start CSS, and we're going to start making our websites look pretty. Okay, so with that, I will let you go, and I'll see you guys on Friday. Bye, everyone.